Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Gina, and this is my first installment of Booked and Writing. So Booked and Writing is going to kind of be, I guess, a format similar to a podcast, but I refuse to attach the name podcast to it simply because commitment. I feel like when someone says they're starting a podcast, that means they're kind of guaranteeing X amount of episodes a week, usually. I would consider this more of a monthly get together, a little chat session, a little yap session. It's kind of like when you haven't seen a friend in a bit, and so you just sit there and you catch up on everything. That's how I'm treating this. So basically, what I wanted was a format and a series where I just sit here and I talk about updates with me and reading and my writing, and then also just like on the book community in general. Lord knows there's kind of constantly things going on in the book community, and I have thoughts, and I don't usually share those thoughts. Well, I do, like with friends and stuff, but sometimes I just kind of want to talk about some of them, not all of them. I don't in like inserting myself into drama or really being a part of it, but there are certain things where I just have some thoughts. And so that's kind of what this is going to be. My goal is to have one of these videos a month. We'll see if that happens, but it'd be nice, wouldn't it? And it's also just an excuse for me to sit here and talk for like 40 minutes because we know I love to talk. Now, because it is a bit more like a podcasty style, and I really just mean that like I'm sitting here, I'm just talking, not much going on, pretty standard. It's really meant for you to turn on. You can walk away. You don't need to look at me while I'm speaking. I prefer if you didn't, actually. That means there's gonna be like minimal cuts as well. I'm not gonna do any like effects or anything. Every once in a while, it just might be like small trims here and there, but that's about it. So, to kick this off, I have a little list of things that I thought, oh, this would probably be good to talk about. So let's get started. First of all, hello. Like I said, my name's Gina. I'm going to give a little backstory into my reading journey because I don't think I've ever really sat down and talked about this. Maybe I have. Going back to podcasts, I've tried it technically thrice. My friend Carmen and I started one, and then I think we did like 3 episodes, and then we went, ooh, maybe we should rebrand. I don't know if we really like the direction we're going. So we tried again. That one never got uploaded. I did splice a few pieces together and put it up on my other channel. I think that was the first video I ever put up on there. And then, so we tried that twice. And then I did one. I made one whole episode. And then I went, oh, I don't really have much to talk about. I was rather new in my reading journey, and I still feel like I am a bit, but I've definitely read more than I have then. I remember sitting there and being like, I have about 5 books I'm willing to talk about and excited to talk about. Whereas now I feel like there's a lot more. I've been in the community for a little bit longer. Last year was my first full year of reading consistently traditionally published books. So growing up, I did not like reading. Reading was actually, funnily enough, a punishment that I was given. Like if I was in trouble and grounded, it was, oh, you have to go read. And that was the worst time in my life. I had those little bookmarks that had the little timer on it. My parents would set that up, and I would change the time down and be like, oh, look, my 15 minutes of reading is done. I just really didn't like it. And I remember, I think, I'm trying to remember, I was pretty young. And in English class, we had to read some books. And my teacher had the hardest time with me because I just found them boring, not entertaining. They weren't capturing my attention. They really had the first 5 pages to convince me, and if they didn't, I was out. There was one book that I really enjoyed, and I'm pretty sure it was a historical fiction, and that's the one I liked, and I remember my teacher being very surprised by that. Me too, thinking back on it. And then after that, I tried, what was it? The only book I can remember reading after that, and I don't think it was in the same time frame, but was like The Fault in Our Stars or something within that era. Like Looking for Alaska and stuff started coming out, and I think I read The Fault in Our Stars, and I didn't love it. I didn't think it was terrible, but I didn't love it, and so I didn't really love reading. I liked the Harry Potter books, but that took me a while. Never read Twilight, never read The Hunger Games. Still haven't read either of those. It just didn't really click with me. And then I'm trying to remember, I think, when did I discover fan fiction? I was on Wattpad. We all were on Wattpad, okay? If you didn't have a Wattpad journey, are you a true reader? I was on Wattpad. I was on Wattpad when like the One Direction and 5 Seconds of Summer Wattpad YN self inserts were a big thing. And I thought they were silly goofy. I would read them. And then after came out, or it didn't come out. I wasn't there when it was written, but I was there when it was really big on Wattpad. And I think I read it. I think I read a lot of it. And then that fell off for me. I was like, okay, I'm done with this YN stuff. It's not doing anything for me anymore. And then fast forward to 2020 with COVID, I was doing all of the different things that I could try in lockdown. A big thing was video games. And then a big thing that seems to surprise a lot of people was I was really, really, really into fishing. Now, that wasn't out of left field. I used to go fishing a lot with my dad when I was younger, and then I stopped because I realized that fish have feelings. They don't have a long memory, though. They don't have a good memory. Same. But when I was informed they could feel pain and I had caught the same fish 3 times because there's this really small like lake we would go to, I felt really bad. And so then I just started feeding the fish, which now I learn what I was feeding them was killing them. So honestly, catching and releasing was better, but I didn't know that. But anyways, 2020 was fishing a lot. And then I reached a point in fishing where it wasn't calming anymore. I was getting upset because like they would break my line or lures would get stuck. And so then I'd have to break my line. Oh, ooh, there was nothing worse than buying a new $20 lure and then it getting stuck on some like fucking rock. And then you try everything. You sit there for 20, 30 minutes trying to get it undone. But it's too far out there too, so you can't even like go out there. So then you just got to cut the line. That happened to me so many times, and I reached the end of my line. I was like, oh, we're done here. And so I wanted to find something more relaxing that I could still do outside because, like, being stuck inside sucked. And I was like, oh, reading. People seem to like reading. I don't, but let's see if I do. So I remember at that time I bought the traditionally published first book of the After series. I bought The Cruel Prince, and then there was one other book that I just don't even remember what it was. I tried reading After, didn't hit the same, didn't like it. Then I tried reading The Cruel Prince, and when I had looked that up, people had told me it was romance. And if you read The Cruel Prince, you know that the romance of it all is like a subplot. It is really more of a political intrigue book. And then there's a little subplot of romance. And I was like, what the fuck? Because at the time I wanted romance, which is kind of crazy if you follow me now, because you're like, that's not, you're not a romance girly, which might be turning into a slight one. But, anyways, at the time, that's what I wanted because that's what I kind of knew. And none of those worked out for me. Then I discovered fan fiction, and I don't remember how. I think it was honestly on TikTok. I was really late to the TikTok game. I really didn't want to download it because when it was going off as like Musically or whatever, I was like, what am I gonna do with that app? And then it turned into TikTok, and everyone went, no, they rebranded. There's really funny stuff. So I downloaded it in quarantine, and then somehow I ended up on Harry Potter TikTok, and then that just led me to Harry Potter fan fiction, Dramione specifically, and I fell into the biggest rabbit hole of Dramione fan fiction of my life. I was binge reading these thick ass stories in like 48 hours. I'm pretty sure when I first read Manacled, it took me 2 days, maybe a day and a half. I wouldn't sleep. I would sit there. So I figured out rather early on how to download it to my phone's like books app. I did not read it on the website. The second I pulled up AO3 and there was this white background, I couldn't do it. And so I remember looking it up on TikTok how to get it onto my phone, and people showed me. And so I would just sit there and read it. And I bet if I opened up my books app right now, the only things on here, yep, the only things on here are fan fictions, I believe. Like there's a few actual books, but like if we went all the way back to the beginning, this is all fan fiction. And I read all of those. And I was having a grand time. I'm pretty sure the first one I read was Liatoza, which is Love in the Time of a Zombie Apocalypse by Rizzle Writes. And then I read Dematmobile by Is the Self-Care, which is being traditionally published into The Irresistible Urge. Well, that not that exact story, but inspired by The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy by Bridget Knightley. And then I believe I read, it was either then The Auction or then Manacled. Manacled was not my first one. Those who tell you to read Manacled as your first Hermione fan fiction hate you. They're your biggest enemy. Is it a good story? Yes, but I do not think that should be your introduction unless you want to be a one and done. Then maybe that one. But if you want to ease your way into it, but you want something kind of in the same setting, maybe a little dark, go for The Auction. I really liked reading Liatosa first because it was so far removed from the canon universe that I knew and loved that it was easier for my brain to accept that this was happening and that these characters were acting a certain way. Whereas a bit of like The Auction and Manacled seemed a little bit too close for comfort, especially Manacled. Though Manacled, I didn't cry reading Manacled. Keep in mind, I was staying up till like 3 a.m. just binge reading stories, and I actually have only cried a few times when reading a book, but the first book to ever make me cry was a fan fiction, actually. But I just don't tend to cry reading, and maybe that's because I don't see things very much. I don't know. I wish I cried more while reading. That would be nice. Goal: find more books to make me cry. I get choked up and I get my feelings hurt, but Manacle did make me cry. And after I found out that people were crying while reading it, I felt really like something was wrong with me. Anyways, fell down the Dramione fanfiction hole for a while, binge read a ton, then I stopped reading for a bit, and then I rediscovered fanfiction again and started reading it. And I was like, I would like to try traditionally published books again. But it was really hard for me. A part of me felt like I was cheating on these characters that I love by reading other characters. That was the one thing that I found really hard about fan fiction, was that I kept reading specifically the same pairing, that I could not fathom the idea of reading a story not about these two, and I wasn't really liking that. I wanted some variety. And so I went to something that felt pretty similar, which was the Shatter Me series. Brunette girl, blonde boy. uh, I mean, come on. She's the good one, he's the bad one. It's very Hermione coded, and I binged the fuck out of that series. I bought the first book, and I bought it because I saw this one. You know how people make those TikToks with the quotes and stuff from a piece of a book, and then they usually caption it like Shatter Me series. That's, they just put Shatter Me, like that was the book. And so I assumed this quote was in the first book. That quote wasn't until the third book. Now, even though I love this series because it really ignited my love for reading, the first book is not very good. And this I could say for a lot of series. I think out of all of the ACOTAR books, the first book is not very good. Red Rising, I still think the first book is the weakest. It can be a thing, and I think that just shows that the author gets stronger in their writing skills as they continue. I would say that I love the Shepherd King duology. I think the first book is weaker than the second. Not that it's bad, but like the first Shatter Me book is not very good. Okay. I think about 40 of those pages just say the word "I'm not insane" over and over again. Concerning if you're doing that. Anyways, I binged those books. So I started reading these. I think it was a week between me quitting and leaving my one job. And then I had a week until I started my next one, which is the one I'm in now. And I went, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to read. And so I went to the store. I bought the first book. I went home. I binged the first book. And then the next day I went, okay, I got to go back again. And at this time, I need you to understand that Gina didn't know it was legal for you to buy more than one book at a time. And I'm being so serious. I didn't know because I was going off of what I knew from the library that I went to. I think my school library. At one point, there was a time where you could only get one book at a time. You could only take one out. And so I thought it was the same when you were giving them your money. It's not, but I kind of wish I still believed that. Portion control, you know what I mean? So my routine for a week, because I read every single book, even the novellas, I didn't just read the trilogy. I should have just read the trilogy. But I would wake up, go to Barnes and Noble, I would walk around, but I'd leave with just the one book that I knew I needed and wanted. I'd check out, I'd go home, I would binge it, read all throughout the day, finish it at night, and then wake up the next day, rinse, repeat, do it again and again until I finished the series. And then I went back to fan fiction because I went, oh, I miss those characters. Where can I find them again? Oh, fan fiction, because I went to these characters because they reminded me of Dramione fan fiction. And then my first book out of traditionally published book retirement, the first one that I came back with, I believe was Fourth Wing. I think I read This Is How You Lose the Time War somewhere in there, but I wasn't like getting back into traditionally published books as like a thing that I was reading. I read that because that's one of my best friend's favorite books. And so I wanted, to be known is to be loved. And so to know someone's favorite book is to love that person so much. And I love my best friend. So I wanted to read her favorite book. But my first one coming out of retirement was Fourth Wing. I didn't like Fourth Wing. If you liked Fourth Wing, I'm very happy for you because I wanted to love it. I bought it because there was a dragon on the cover. That's it. And the best part of the book was in fact the dragons. I loved them, but I didn't mesh with the story. And I've talked about it enough, so I'm not going into that. So then that put me in a little bit of a slump because my first book was not a banger, you know? And keep in mind, I have probably a shelf of maybe 10 other traditionally published books at this time, I believe, maybe 10 to 30. I had a decent amount because then I realized that you could buy more than one, and I started buying a bunch. And then I can't remember from there what I started reading, but eventually I found my groove. And I spent this time trying to figure out what books I liked. And what I learned is that usually I cannot build my TBR solely off of what's popular on BookTok because what BookTok was showing me was what was popular more so like in the romantasy genre. And I have nothing wrong with romance being in a story, but just romantasy when it's romance with a bit of fantasy, it just didn't seem to be what my brain and preferences were looking for. So I had an interesting first like half year of reading, but I really started to fall into this groove. And I would say now, I think I know what I like. I'm still trying to figure it out actually. When people ask me what I'm looking for in a book, I have a little bit of a hard time. I think what I'm looking for is other than, you know, good writing, uh, good pacing, well developed characters, like all of those more critical things. I'm looking for a story that taps into my emotions, whether it be happy, sad, angry, anxious, whatever it might be. I want to feel something when I'm reading. And I recently discovered this because I made a TikTok talking about how I don't see anything when I read. Maybe stick figures, but most of the time it's just words. But I know I'm thinking about it, but I just don't see it. And I think perhaps that plays a part into why I'm looking more for like rather than when people are saying, oh, I really love this because the stunning visuals I get when reading. I'm like, I don't give a damn about that because I can't see anything. I don't have that feature. I'm more looking for you to tap into like my emotions and things like that. I'm also looking for, I really, really love when a story, regardless if it's following like a cookie cutter standard, like there's no such thing as an original idea. There's always going to be pieces that you can relate to another book, whatever it might be inspired by. Who cares? What I love is when there is some sort of originality and creativity and the way that they execute that, when I can tell that there was a lot of thought put behind something, whether it be the plot twist, magic system, something that just really stands out in that one little piece, that will make me love a story. I Going back to a fan fiction, there's this fan fiction called Timeless, and you can just tell the effort that this author put in and the thought that they put into how they crafted this timeline. It made me just fall in love with that story. It's a well-written story. It messes with your emotions, but that is the one thing that I tend to emphasize the most when I tell people to read it because I love when I can tell that an author like They put their whole author OC into it, okay? That was such like a passion project for them. And I think that's something that I really love. I think sometimes in books you can tell when maybe an author falls out of love with the story when they're writing it, and that happens, you know? You can tell when maybe it's not something that they perhaps were fully in love with from the beginning, and that's okay. But when you can just like feel the heart and soul that an author put into a book, oh my God, it makes me so happy. Like, I love it. I love the effort. I love the heart and soul and the passion behind it. Now, what else is on my list before I continue on this tangent? Oh, no, this is actually a very good transition. Wow, I'm so good at this. Now, going off of that in a way when it comes to like writing when you're passionate about a story, if you didn't know, I'm writing a story. I'm writing a book. I'm working on my debut novel. It's a fantasy. If you're not watching right now, like if you walked away, I just made a really excited face, just so you know. So, unlike with reading, I have always loved writing, which seems to surprise people, right? And it surprises me because you would assume that someone who loves the act of story and storytelling would love it in several different forms of media. That was not the case for me. I was not this big avid reader. I also was not like a movie buff. That's why I have a whole other channel where it's like me watching things for the first time and people being like, "How have you never seen this?" Because I didn't care. I was very much into like sports. I collected rocks for a very long time. I I was always a creative person and needed a creative outlet, but it never seemed to go into reading. And then I really liked making videos though. So it was writing and making videos that I seem to always go back to throughout periods of my life, but never reading. And that actually kind of pisses me off because I really wish I liked reading when I was younger. And it's not that my dad didn't try, because he tried. But once I was told to read, I didn't want to do it anymore. You know how that goes? Anyways, I always really loved writing. The only problem was, and this is how my brain still kind of works, is I will come up with, when it comes to coming up with a story and building one, I come up with the ending and or the plot twist first. And then I work backwards of, okay, who are these characters? What would justify and lead up to such a thing? And so when I was younger, I was very impatient. And so I would start out the beginning. I can vividly remember me doing this countless times. I would start out establishing the story. I get maybe 1,000 words in, and then like, all right, I just want to get to the good part. And I would just skip to the plot twist or the ending. And I'd write that out, and that would satisfy me enough because I told what I wanted to tell. I'd save the little Word document, and then I'd walk away. Never touch it again. That's so, why did I just couldn't finish a story. I was like, fuck the beginning, fuck the middle. Here's the end. Here's the good bits, you know? But if you were to actually like operate that way, nowadays it wouldn't work because the plot twist would not be plot twisting because there was nothing leading up to it. There's no misdirection in that story. Like if my dad could revive the family computer, the amount of barely written stories on there would be insane. And I wish I could read them because insane. But however, how it kind of ties into to like me discovering that well, my love for reading was I always loved writing and it kind of always seemed to happen. I didn't do it consistently. When I was younger, I would write a lot. English was my favorite class. And then after high school, I really, when I'm looking back on it, the only times I would start writing again was when I was going through something really tough in my life. And I kind of wrote basically self insert fan fiction, except it wasn't YN. I would just make up these fictional characters, what they were struggling with or going through or fighting about was exactly what I was going through, struggling with, fighting with someone about. And it was my way of like working through that. However, if I was fighting with someone, I would always make them like lose and then I was winning and they'd feel bad, you know? That's how I'd handle that. Then, though, when I discovered fan fiction, that's actually how I found two of my best friends. So, one of them who I read This Is How You Lose the Time War for, she's one of them. I discovered them because we were reading the same fan fiction at the time, and they're my best friends now. And they were the first people that I ever let read some of my writing with them knowing that it was my writing. Like I had posted on like anonymous boards before and things, but never in a million years would I ever attach my name to something, let alone let someone who knows me as an individual, like on an intimate level. Like you're my friend, you know the things I've been through, you whatever it might be. I would never let them. And then I let them. And I think it's because they also like writing. And it was a safe space, a safe zone for me to express myself. And they kind of really gave me that confidence to do it. And so I wrote a fan fiction and I let them read it. So they were essentially my readers. Oh, fuck. Beta readers through that. And how I came up with that idea, it's my favorite little story to tell, was I was in a cabin in Arizona for my friend's birthday party. I was sleeping. I wasn't actually asleep. I was on an air mattress, freezing to death. It was like 2 a.m. and I was scrolling on TikTok, and this girl who has this like short little cover of the song Ghost of You by, it's the one by Justin Bieber. You get confused. Sometimes I think it's the 5 Seconds of Summer. No, it's not Five Sauce. It is Justin Bieber. She had like a little cover and it was a little haunting, a little romantic, and very emotion filled, at least like from what I was hearing, the way it sounded. She had this little echo on it. Ooh, it gave me chills. And immediately hearing that, I saw the plot twist, the ending, the overall like main theme of it. And I was like, I'm going to write a one shot. If you don't know fan fiction, a one shot is essentially like a short story. It's one long chapter. It's not this long establishing thing. It's really just like throwing you into a scene, into a piece of a story, and that's it. And so I was texting my friend. I was telling her all about it. I had all these plans. And then it turned into, okay, well, maybe 3 chapters because I have a beginning, middle, end. And then it turned to, okay, maybe 5. And then it became like a 75,000 word fan fiction, which in the fan fiction community is very short, but that's not. That's a standard novel. Okay? Fuck you. It's like a novella or whatever. I think it's more than a novella. I think a novella caps at 50,000, so fuck you. For those of you who are like, it's too short, shut up. I think it's the perfect size. And I wrote that. I wrote that in like 2 months. It was so exciting. It was the first time I ever wrote a story from beginning to end, completed it, and then I posted it. And at first, I was not attaching. The people who beta read it knew, like my friends knew it was me, but I was not at first attaching it to me. And then I like had this confidence, and I don't push out there a ton that I wrote it, but I don't hide it. Um, and it was really exciting. It was exhilarating. My goal was with writing that was just to make one person cry. And my friends can attest to this. I told them my only goal, I don't care how many people read it. I don't care if people hate it. My one goal is just one person telling me that I made them cry. And I think that's because I really appreciate when an author has the ability to elicit emotion from me. That for me as a writer, my favorite thing is tapping into my readers' emotions and being able to essentially manipulate them into feeling the way I want them to at certain moments and getting that emotional response that I wanted. And so for me, if someone had told me that they cried while reading it, that meant that I was successful with that story. And I did post it on my birthday. I wrote the whole thing. I posted every single chapter on my birthday because for my birthday, I wanted to make someone cry. And I did. I did make people cry. And some people posted videos, and they're my favorite things in the entire world. Sometimes I go back and revisit them just to feel something again. It's my favorite thing. And more people have read it than I thought would, which makes me slightly uncomfy, but it's also just like kind of wild because I all the time forget that I wrote it. And then every once in a while get an email from AO3 telling me that someone commented. I'm like, oh my God, people still read this? This is a thing? Or every once in a while, the weirdest thing, because TikTok knows no bounds, sometimes a video will come up and someone's recommending it or it's just mentioned, whatever it might be. And I go, I wrote that. That's crazy. With that, though, writing a story from beginning to end, seeing that people liked it and enjoyed my writing, and that I was able to be successful in the one thing I wanted, which was eliciting that certain emotional response gave me the confidence to then work on an original novel that I am going to share. And so that's what I'm working on. I'm writing a fantasy book. Um, Once again, I think my book is a little bit more of like a character study, I would say. I'm really focusing on the effects of one's upbringing and the environment that they are brought up in, the morals that they're taught, and how that affects them as an adult, but also how does someone who grew up in an environment with like, oh, this XYZ is what we know, this is how we act, this is how we treat people, and then going and being shown like a different ways, like will they adapt? Will they change their ways? And what behavior is excused and what isn't? Like what is justified by, oh, well, this is what they've known, and what's like, it doesn't matter that that's what they've known. That's bad. You're an asshole. That's that's kind of like what I explored. My main thing going into it was this constant question of how far is too far, because we love reading about morally great characters, but my question is always, yeah, but at what point is a morally great character no longer redeemable to you? Like, at what point would you not justify their actions? Would you be like, though they're pretty, be like, hey, you're a bad seed. You're a bad person. And so that's something that I really want to explore with this story. As for where I'm at on it, I'm working on it. My plan and hopes and dreams and everything in between is to have this out and available for people to buy before the end of this year. They're in my description box on this video. You can go to my website, standard website. It's just there to collect emails. You can sign up for my newsletter. I think I have it set up where like one automatic thing goes to. I don't send a lot out in there. I just recently sent the first one out not that long ago. But if you want to keep up with stuff and like get emails about that, you can sign up there. And when you do sign up, there's a special little prize in there. The prize is, spoiler alert, it's artwork of two of the characters. Thank you. And if you like Manacled, Senlin Yu, who does a lot of the artwork for Manacled, she's the one who did the artwork of those characters. So if you'd like to see that, if you sign up for my email newsletter, the automatic one that goes to you, at the bottom is a picture. So you don't have to though, because I'll still post it everywhere else. I'll be so annoying when I'm done with this book because I've been working on it for forever. Okay. Now, enough about me. Let's talk about other people in the book space. I'm just kidding. I just want to talk about the book space in general because I have been seeing some things that I just want to talk about. One of them being special editions. At what point are publishers going to realize, or even just bookstores, going to realize that just because you add a little glitter or change the color doesn't mean that that's like a special edition? Because in my mind, a special edition is something that's very unique. It's, you can justify charging more for it, and I can justify paying for it because it's like this really thought out edition that really is made with those who love the book, those readers in mind, if that makes sense. So the biggest the one I have the biggest issue with is the Shepherd King duology special edition, and the reason for that is because they literally just made it a hardcover and added a little like gold edging to it, and I think like some sprayed edges. But it's the same artwork. I That book has so many unique things that you could have done with a special edition cover. Oh, you could have used the cards. You could have done so many different things where like if someone saw it they wouldn't know, but if someone who hasn't read it, but if someone who had read it, if they were to look at the cover, they would be like, "Oh my god, that's because of XYZ." I can't say it because like spoilers, but I love those type of covers when like special editions come out where if you read the book, there's blatantly spoilers like on the cover, but you wouldn't know unless you've read the book. Those are my favorite because you know that they thought about the readers and they had the readers in mind when making it. And for me, the Shepherd King duology special editions by Barnes and Noble specifically, it felt like a money grab. And this is nothing towards Rachel Gillig. Rachel Gillig has no say in these things. Um, it's Barnes and Noble's fault. And I did not like it. And I love that duology. When a special edition comes out for that duology that I actually think is good, I will be buying it. And I already own both of the books, but I love that duology so fucking much. But you're not getting what, 30, $40 from me just for you to make it hardcover and add this fuck ass gold edging around it. No. And I love buying books. I will find any reason to buy a book. But you're not getting me that way. What the fuck? That's one big thing that I've had. It upsets me all the time when I see those like clearly cash grabby special editions. Do I have a special edition behind me that's actually really nice? Let me show you one. Now, is this a special edition? I think so. Or it's just like a hardcover. What regardless, the regular one, which I have, let me grab it. So I have the unfortunate reprint of like the paperback of Wool, the first book in the Silo series. And I say unfortunate because it has the fake sticker of Apple TV and it has the actors on it. I hate when books do this. Good for you. You got an adaptation, but you don't need to do this. I would have preferred the other edition where just like I think it's red or orange or something and just says Wool down it. This, no like, and I like these actors and I love the show more than the book actually, but this shit pisses me off when books do that. Stop doing that. And the fake stickers, fuck you. I loved the book though. Well, I love the story in general because I love the show. And so I bought this version, which is this hardcover. It has these red sprayed edges and it looks really clean and sleek, right? What I love about it more is that when you open it, there's this artwork here and there's this artwork here, and the dust jacket is reversible and it has this on here. And if you've read the book and or seen the show, but if you're familiar with the story, those three things are a significant thing in the story, a significant detail. And I love that. This to me, I was willing to buy another copy because it felt like they made this for those who truly enjoyed the story. And they're like, this is a nod to you. You know what these things mean. They're very subtle. You know what the reverse dust jacket means. Like, these are parts of the story that a reader who enjoyed it would be like, aha, I know that. I know what you're doing there. And that's what I love. I don't love that random ass. Let me just add a little Canva border to this cover right now. No, literally, I think I've seen that border on Canva, and because I love Canva, I use it all the time. It's how I make my thumbnails. Another thing that really upsets me are when they take a book and they make a movie or a show adaptation, and it's really bad. But also, just right now, it seems like there's like this big increase in books being made into a movie or a show. And yes, there are definitely some that deserve, and I would love to see be made into that. For example, Murderbot. Oh my god, I cannot wait for Apple to come out with that. So good. But it just feels like everything's being turned into a show or a movie these days. And I'm a very firm believer, and I said this on TikTok recently, that some stories aren't meant to be told in certain media formats. And I think what happens when you take a book and you make it into a movie, let's say, is you do lose certain details. You lose certain abilities to do like first person. If a book's first person and then you turn it into a movie, it's really hard to keep the same tone or just like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not energy. That's not the word I'm looking for. Atmosphere? It's just hard to turn that into a movie because while you can still have like you could have inner monologue, I guess, but most of the time we don't do that. It's just hard to go from this first person where we only know what they know and then making it to a movie and trying to keep that and being like, "Oh, we only know what they know." No, we don't. I'm fucking seeing it right now with my own two eyes. And you got to move around and you've got to establish things differently, and just there's just so much that you can get across and tell, and the details you can add in a book that you can't add into a movie. Now there are some things that you can do in a movie that just like a book, words on a page, could never do. But I'm a firm believer that there are a lot of books that just aren't meant to be seen on a screen. They're meant to be enjoyed in its original format, which is words on a page. And for a reader to read it and for it to be filtered through their imagination and their interpretation of things, and for them to be immersed in their own way. And also, a big issue a lot of the times too that we see a lot of people get upset about is adaptations. Casting is fucking unbelievably hard sometimes, especially if you have such a big and well-loved story. There's always going to be people who are upset, and that's not something I'm like too ever upset about. um I mean, I did watch Percy Jackson. I was like, Annabeth, I don't think that's what she looked like in the book. And also, these kids are way too fucking old. I'm talking about the first movie, not the TV series. I heard they've done a little bit better with that. But in general, I just feel like what's happening right now is because BookTok really breathed life back into the book community and into the publishing and just like book loving. And not that people haven't been loving books, but it's really I hate to say this, mainstreamed it in a way. It's made it the community. It's more of a community too, as well, because you don't have to go to a local book club and go sit there. You can just interact with people online. I've made so many amazing friends through Book Talk that are like actual friends and in my life. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without like Book Talk. But because of that, you're always going to have people who are greedy, right? Okay. The film industry is no exception to that. And they will see a popular book and they'll be like, yep, the people love it. Let's make it into a movie. You know what's going to happen, guys, if you don't make a good adaptation? The people who love that book are going to shit on your movie because it was not done well. People really like the movie Annihilation. I don't. I love the book Annihilation. Watched the movie. What the fuck was that? Then I looked into it and I was like, okay, there's absolutely no way this man, made this movie thinking about the book, with the book in mind. And I looked it up and it was based off of what he remembered from the book. And that made a lot of sense to me. But then you should have just changed the title because it wasn't even the same story. Felt like you played a game of telephone with 60 different people, and then you were the 60th in line, and they were telling you the plot and everything that happened in the book. You were 60th, and you had very little very little accurate information left over. Fuck you. I'm so upset about that because I also spent money on that movie to rent it just to be scared, jump scared like twice, and disappointed. It's not my favorite combo in the entire world. Anywho, moral of the story, let's do better with special editions. And also like let's tone back on it a little bit. Not everything needs a special edition, and also not every book needs like 50 special editions because at this point what's special about it? Not much, because you're just going to come out with another one next month. And not everything needs to be adapted. Not everything needs to be from page to screen. And also let's do good if we do that. So I'm asking. I feel like I'm not asking for much, but it feels like I'm asking for the entire world and the stars and the moon and everything, you know? Insanity. The last thing I'm gonna say, if you're on BookTok, I'm sure you've seen, there's been a little bit of an increase in rage baiters in the BookTok community who sit there and they make a hot take. And really, it's not a hot take, it's just a bad take. But they know it's a bad take. And then they sit there and they go, oh, how did BookTok find me? Girl, you know exactly how BookTok find you. And the girl, honestly, I mean that for men and women because I've seen both do it. Don't give in. Don't give in to these rage baiters because all they're looking for is attention. And you're giving it to them. I know you're not liking their video, but you're giving it to them. And they are loving opening their TikTok app and seeing they have hundreds of comments. It's their favorite thing. It fuels their ego. Another thing, don't ever pay a man to read a book on live. I saw a glimpse of that, of what was happening. I caught the end of that. What the fuck? Don't do that. Listen, no offense to men, because I know a lot of my audience, especially on YouTube, is actually men, and you know what, you guys are great. Nothing but peace and love. But there's a certain breed of man, and it starts with that man being a thirst trapper on TikTok. Red flag number one. Then they get fan casted as like someone in a romance book. That's not a red flag. They didn't ask for that. We can go ahead, fan cast. We do it for everything. But it's when they start playing into that. Red flag number two. Those are two red flags that you should already be running. The third red flag, a red alarm that should actually get them put on a list, is when they start monetizing off of it in the way of like, hey girl, come spend like $30 to come watch me read this book that you guys think about me as one of the characters, even though I said I hated when you guys would comment that shit, but I'm kind of broke, huh? He didn't say those words, but I feel like that's what he meant by everything he said. I didn't really watch any of his videos. I watched other people talking about it because if I watch his videos, then TikTok's gonna think I want more of it, and I do not. But please, he's just a man. Don't ever give a man your money, period. Don't ever give a man your money to read a book to you, period. Does he even know how to read? That was just mean. But I feel like he slightly deserves it because he was trying to do that. Also, illegal. That's illegal of him. And that's why he had to shut it down. I just think that's fucking ridiculous. Guys, 2025. Now I hate cancel. I was gonna say 2025. Cancel the thirst trap men who try to monetize BookTok girlies. I think they'll cancel themselves though, so we really don't need to put any effort. We don't need to give them any of our energy. And that's that. I think that's how we end this. I think that's a good spot to end this video. Those were the things that I saw on TikTok. To be fair, I don't go on TikTok as much as like anymore. When that ban happened for what, 3 hours, the fact that my muscle memory, knowing that we were banned, that I couldn't open, couldn't watch, was to just like click it, that concerned me. And before then, I was already trying to like reduce my time on there. I don't spend that much time on there, but now I really try not to. And when I am on there, because like I mentioned earlier, I believe I don't really build my TBR too much off of what's popular on BookTok. I don't interact that much with it, so my algorithm's really how you say fuck ass. I get this one man who has like this little chain that's kind of like a nunchuck, and he hits these little balloons. I have that guy who appears on my TikTok often. I get videos of what else? Pandas. I get some pandas every once in a while, some horses. And then every once in a while, like a book video. So I know that when some sort of book drama comes up on my For You page, that means like shit's hitting the fan. Like that, I'm not falling into those niche categories. I'm hitting the ones that's like, hey, shit's hitting the fan. Gina, here you go. And so I stay in the loop a little bit, and I look and I silently watch and silently judge. But now, because of this series, we sometimes not be silent about it. And so, therefore, I'm not being silent about the blonde girl who tried to say that dragons aren't real and also said, she just said some dumb fucking shit, let's be so honest. And she's rage baiting. She's trying so hard to rage bait. Those were the dumbest videos I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't even need to go into that. But the man and his money and trying to do that, stupid as fuck. I remember sitting there being like, this cannot possibly be real. Did people actually give money? And I still don't know if people actually gave money. I'm assuming they did. Don't like that. I also, another one. I saw those men who were dressed up in Barnes and Noble who were like, you walk into Barnes and Noble, you see us, what are you doing? My response in my brain was, if I need to get a book and you're in my way, I'm going to ask you to politely move, and then I'm going to go buy my book and I'm going to leave. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I came here for. That shit pissed me off too. It was just cringy. I was just like, what do you mean? It reminded me of in middle school when you're like texting your crush and they go, what do you do? And you go, I'm laying in bed. And they go, well, what would you be doing if I was there? And you know they're trying to get you to say something else. And you just go, I don't know. Still laying in bed. And why would you be in my bed? Get out of here, you crusty, dusty, musty. On that note, we're at 50 minutes. So let's end this video. What did we learn here today, class? Tell me. I'll tell you. We learned about my backstory with reading and how I did not like reading, but now I love reading and I own way too many books. We learned about how I like to write and how I am writing a book and that I wrote a fan fiction. Honestly, if you look into the back of my videos, well, it's cut off right now, but it's always been right there in plain sight which one I wrote. We learned that special editions are sometimes hoes, as are movie adaptations, and TikTok thirst trap men who prey on BookTok women ain't shit. And rage baiters should eat shit. And I think that's a pretty good video. All right. Well, if you liked it, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, share. And like I said, I'm going to try to do one of these like a month. I need usually a month to have anything to say anyways, to read things. I didn't really talk about what I'm reading currently. Realized I fucked up on that end. I'll just quickly go over. I'm reading Catabasis, though everyone seems to disagree on how to say that. I don't fucking know. Catabasis is how I'm saying it. I'm currently listening to the second book in the Wool series, or the Silo series, which is Shift. I'm also finishing Between Two Fires. I'm also listening to Dark Age. And I think that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. And that's what I'm up to. Good shit. Recently finished Morning Glory Milking Farm. I don't want to talk about that one, so I'm going to go. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.